A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another live session of GETI Talk. My name is Shilpi. I'm the Relationship Manager with the Global Education and Training Institute. Well, what is leadership? Is it only about leading the people, making decisions, and gaining profits for the corporates? I mean, that is how, corporates see a leader. But then there is more to a leader. A leader requires Claire. I'm not talking about the chocolate eclairs, but Claire. That is communication, leadership, accountability, relationship, and my guest is going to talk about. His name is Mr. Andrew Shepard. He is from Lucknow, but based in Vadodara from last many years. He has an experience with the corporates around about 34 years, and he's the founder of Claire Skills, which is based in Vadodara. He is into training, rigorous training, especially into leadership and management. He has worked with corporates like Cipla and Siemens and Reliance. So, yes, it doesn't take anything to guess that he's going to talk about leadership, stay liquid. That is a meandering narrative of good leadership and bad leadership. And that is also a book that he has authored. So, Andrew, it's over to you and enlighten our audience on this topic, please.
Right. Thank you so much, Shilpi. That was wonderful to wonderful introduction. Yes, everybody. I am from Lucknow. I attended school in Lucknow, as also I attended my college in Lucknow, and my initial years in the corporate world were in Lucknow. Subsequently, work took me around the country, and as of now, I am here in Baroda. That's in Gujarat. After about 34 years of working in the corporate world, I moved out and I founded this organization or company, or you could say a brand called Clay Skills. And Shilpi has already uh, elaborated what is Clay. Clay is an acronym, and it is these five skills that I feel anyone, any professional who wants to grow in his or her field needs to imbibe: communication, leadership, accountability, relationship, and empathy. And when we go through this program, you will find that there is a lot you will understand based on what is currently happening in India and in the world, and you will understand how these five elements really make a difference. Okay, so that is what we will talk about as we go through. And so I am delivering, as Shilpi said, workshops, training workshops, coaching sessions, mentoring sessions to management associations and associations like GETI. I work with schools and universities for the MBA students and also for the faculty development. I work a lot with corporates, government PSUs. I work with the army, uh, training of officers. So there's a lot that I am covering, and of late I've been working with a lot of startups. So the mentoring and coaching of startups, people who are bringing their ideas into the world. So I work with them so that they can do a lot better. So there's a lot that I am covering in under this brand, and I've been satisfied with what I've done in the last 2 years. So, and I hope that this grows further. As Shilpi said, there is a book that I have written that is Stay Liquid. Okay, that's the book Stay Liquid, and it's a meandering narrative of bad leadership and good leadership. So, over my years in the corporate world, I have put together a lot of my own stories, episodes, incidents, anecdotes that I have encountered, and I put it down in this book. The whole idea of doing that is so that you can differentiate between what is bad leadership and what is good leadership. Now the question arises is that are we capable of distinguishing between bad leadership and good leadership? That question remains. But let me get to this topic first, the title of my book, and then maybe we will slowly understand that as we go through. Before that, just to let you know, there are about 7 sections of my talk. Each section will cover a certain aspect of leadership, and the last section will cover certain thoughts that I have with regards to education in India. Okay. My mother was a teacher. My brothers were teachers. My mother was a department head at La Martiniere Girls, Lucknow. And I do have still a lot of friends in the education world, not only in Lucknow, but all over India and outside India also. So I keep talking to them and I keep putting together certain thoughts and try to bring out some sense of what we could do as we move forward. So the title of the book, Stay Liquid, basically means to be fluid, flexible, and smooth, right? That's the basic idea of that. But when it comes to the corporate world, it also means having cash on hand, something what we call in the financial world as cash flow. We know about sales. We know that sales gives us profits, but then from there we have to talk about cash flow. Cash flows really is what every corporate is looking forward to. So whether it is a school like City Montessori or Getty or any corporate in this country or world, they're looking at cash flow, because once they have cash flow, they can invest in new ideas, they can innovate, they can sustain the employees that they have. And this is the problem that we encountered last year when there was no cash flow and people migrated back to their hometowns. And there was a huge loss of economy as well as life. There was a huge loss there. We know the stories of last year. So cash flow is what really is important there. And I believe leadership is the one that can really drive this cash flow. And it's driven through the people. Okay, they themselves cannot do cash flow. I mean, see, you can do things by hook or by crook, but really in the long run, it doesn't work. Okay. The third explanation of this word stay liquid is that do not commit yourself to certain things. Marriage is separate. Okay, I'm not talking about marriage. But in the corporate world, in the professional world, do not commit yourself to an organization, do not commit yourself to a group of people, do not commit yourself totally to your boss, because that doesn't last long, right? We have seen this over and over again in every setup possibly. Okay, be flexible, be liquid, look out, fill up the gaps, fill in the gaps, fill in your own gaps, your competency gaps, and keep moving forward, keep evolving. That is what is important, right? So that's where I find leadership is really stuck up, particularly in India, where we are not able to move forward and we kind of, just do things the way we want, we feel it's right, but we're not really using our wisdom when it comes to that aspect. Uh, Coming back to leadership, as I said, how do we judge between good and bad? But first of all, is there a proper definition of leadership? Is there one complete definition of leadership that we can find in any book? No, really no. There are multiple definitions of leadership. There are multiple explanations of leadership. And as you read book after book, theory after theory, you will keep on getting different aspects of leadership. And for me, that is really, really very good. Because as the title of my book says, stay liquid, you cannot have a leader who is fixed, who is just following a definition. No, you need somebody who can adjust, right? Who can mold himself, herself, and also the people that are following him or her. That is important. One stroke does not fit all. It's different strokes for different people. And therefore, I'm very happy that there is no permanent definition of leadership. Then there is this big debate, whether leadership is inborn or you can learn it. I forget that debate. I don't want to get into that debate. Okay, we are all leaders. When we, from the time we are born to the time we die, we are all leaders in some aspect or the others. Somewhere we are good in something, somewhere we're good in something else. Okay, and that's the way it is. Okay, so there is leadership in all of us. It's up to the guru, the trainer, the mentor, the coach to take out that, expose it, let it come out of the person, and let that person practice those skills. That is what is important. Otherwise, we just become, simple laymen, postmen, and so on and so forth. Well, that's what we don't want, yes men type. We want leaders to come out. That is really, really, really important that we learn. So how do I differentiate between good and bad? I mean, do I measure it against, what people say or how people are performing? Um, do I measure it against profits that the person is bringing in? Do I measure it on popularity of the person? Do I measure it on prudence? So, what do I measure this leadership? Probably you have to measure it on all these aspects. But ultimately, as I have already said, it's we're talking about cash flow. We're talking about the leader developing other people, developing their followers to evolve, and that is important. So there are multiple definitions of leadership, as I was telling you, and but there are some things that I believe leaders should try to avoid totally. Some of it is written in the Hindu scriptures, like the Sanatan Dharma. They point out six traits or behaviors which we should avoid totally. I, for one, the Sanskrit word I will avoid here, but the English translation is lust, anger, gluttony, arrogance, and jealousy. Okay, so these are the what they say you must definitely avoid these behaviors or traits: lust, anger, gluttony, greed, arrogance, and jealousy. This is in the Sanatana Dharma, and it's fantastic. You avoid this, you will not even have stress. You will lead a fantastic life, a wonderful life. In Christian theology, when you come to, they talk about the seven deadly sins. Now, all these six are there in the seven deadly sins, plus sloth, which is procrastination. So that's seven, which we should avoid. And this is fantastic. Over the years, when I've seen it, if you avoid these seven uh, enemies, right, you will really succeed in life and being a better leader day by day. While working at the ground level, I came across a few more which I thought I will elaborate on. It's some of them already within these seven, but I thought I would just put it out in my book, and this is what's written in my book. It talks about jealousy. Tremendous amount of jealousy is there. Recently, Ratan Tata was asked, he says, what are the problems that are there in leadership in any organization? And he says one of them is definitely jealousy, right? The other is just being, just picking on people for nothing at all, right? That is important. Other is lies. Lies is becoming it's huge, and as people are given power, they are pushed up or are allowed to assume positions of power. Lies seem to are becoming the it's natural now, that I should tell lies. Excuses, huge, right? That's important. Yes men. It's because of the formation of nepotism, megalomaniacs, you get a lot of yes men, and they do nothing. Okay, they just sit there, occupy space, and that's it. Okay. Intrusiveness. Now, this has come the last few years, and it's been probably fueled by social media. Social media is highly intrusive. I mean, I can send you a message on your Facebook or WhatsApp. There's so many methods in which I could send you messages. I could send you photographs. I could send you memes and so on. And it's highly intrusive. Maybe you want it, maybe you don't want it. How do I know? Okay. So really, this social media has pushed this problem or this enemy forward, and we need to take care of that. Intrusiveness. Okay. Gossip, hubris, forming groups, cliches, right? Uh, and another thing which I also found is exaggeration. Okay, a lot of you are working in schools. You will know that little children do tend to exaggerate. When they complain or when they talk about things, excuses. The exaggerations that sets into place, and that kind of grows on the teacher. I've seen sometimes, so they also tend to exaggerate when they talk to the HODs or when they talk to their principals. That is dangerous. So we need to control that exaggeration that comes into place. Just keep it simple, keep it basic, keep it with a purpose for the development of the child. In the case of education institutes, keep it for the purpose of growth of the professional. In the case of corporates, that is what is more important that we have out here. So the, these are the things that affect leadership. So these are the negative things which we need to push out. Okay, what the Sanatan Dharma has told us, what Christian theology has told us, the seven deadly sins, nothing different, all the same. Okay, what I have seen over the years in my day-to-day working in offices across India, what I've seen is really important. So I put it down together, and we need to bring this out, push this out. Okay, if you're a leader, show that you're a leader. Don't push it on people. Don't make people, force people to acknowledge you as the leader. Okay, earn it, earn that leadership, and that requires a lot of effort from your side. Okay, what does it require? Clear. That's all. Proper communication, what you're communicating about, what are the leadership skills I'm talking about in terms of being a leader. You don't need to exhibit that, and not just leadership skills. You probably need to have the situational leadership skills, wherein for each situation you can provide guidance or direction or delegation. That is really important. And accountability. Okay, don't push the things down on people and say you are responsible, I am good. Have relations with everybody. Okay, you cannot make some people enemies just because you're a leader. That is definitely not on. Okay, and have empathy for each and every person. Okay, whoever they may be. Right, I think empathy should come first. But I couldn't get the acronym a little bit correct out there, but empathy is huge. Okay, uh, in most instances we rarely talk about empathy, but believe me, I think empathy is one of the biggest things. If there's no empathy, you really will not learn to communicate well, you really not learn to lead well, or you will not take up accountability when it comes into place. And there's no relationship, there's no trust building up if there's no empathy, there's no respect building up if there's no empathy. That is what is important. Okay. So those are the few things that I said. Let me talk about it. So whether you are a leader in a school or university or a college or in a corporate world or even in the army, it's these basics remain the same. They do not change. Okay, it's absolutely the same, right? And that is the important part as we go through. So as I used the word earlier, that was evolve, right? We need to keep evolving. And we know what evolution has done from where how we were formed and so on and so forth. So things have to keep on evolving. And this is a constant process. As they say, change is the only thing constant in the world. So similarly, evolve or to evolve is a constant in the world. Problem arises when we don't evolve. We stop evolution ourselves. Then suddenly we find in our whole system or in our day-to-day activities, we have to do something dramatic to to go forward, to move forward, to address the problems of the current problems or the future problems, right? And then we use this word disruptive. It's jargon. Fine, it's a word that we need to take into use. But disruptive jargons are something I really don't like, actually. I really don't use jargons, and if you check in my book also, I've hardly used jargons. I not hardly use. I've not used jargons because I believe jargons come into play. When leaders or managers, they cannot find a solution to something, so they bring out this nice jargon, right? As like the vanilla brand bandwidth. These days, people are talking about bandwidth. All it means is time. Okay, VUCA. All this we have been experiencing for years. I have put down some VUCA episodes which I have been experiencing since I was a teenager. So I put some things down, but not from my teenager point. I put it down from the time I started working. It's one thing after. So we have been evolving. So we have been facing disruptions. We have been facing the VUCA world. Our bandwidth has been increasing. We don't need these jargons. Okay. I remember, years ago, if somebody got a black and white TV in their house, it was a disruption actually, because every Sunday evening there would be crowds of people coming to that person's house, and there would be another crowd standing outside the person's house, peeping through the window or through the door, to watch that Sunday evening movie that came on Doordarshan. I didn't stop there. On Wednesday or Thursday, there used to be Chitrahar. Another crowd of people would be there, to watch that Chitrahar. Disruptions. But we all took it on. We helped one another, we enjoyed it, and we moved forward. Okay? So please keep evolving. That is the important part. In education, yes, there is, we probably have disruptions, or let's use the word disruptions as we go down in place. How much will all depend on how fast our system changes. So we ultimately, when you give your class 10 or class 12 exam, so that's the exam, that event gives you a certificate. What I'll say is a disruption is when can that event be changed to something else? We can change the path to that exam. We can have innovative ways, some ideas, and so on and so forth to reach that event. But ultimately, it's that event. Can we change that event? I have some idea which I'll throw in a little later as we go through. So, as a leader, please avoid jargons, right? Be simple. Not everybody knows the meaning of these jargons. When I talk about vanilla or bandwidth, I just use 2, 3, but there are so many more. I was doing an interview and I did not know whether I was hiring a talent or a thesaurus. I did not know, because that person was a complete thesaurus. I mean, whatever he spoke was, I had to keep looking at my thesaurus, what does he mean? What does he mean? It was that kind, that state. So speak language. As a leader, speak the language. And this is the communication that is coming in. Speak the language which everybody understands, right? Do things which everybody understands. Don't leave the jargon aside. Okay. It really doesn't work. Okay. So, but we do that. And then I call them copy paste leaders. Microsoft is in the news these days, and one of the things that Microsoft has taught us is copy paste. Copy paste. My boss used to do it, so I will also do it. My boss used to do it, I will also do it, irrespective of whether there could be something better or not. We need to be careful out there. And the other thing as leaders, we need to avoid is nepotism. This is a big killer. I think we've seen that in the last couple of years, we've seen that in a big way. Look back at America, what happened in America. The person was nepotistic, okay, megalomaniac, as we would call the person, and was bringing a lot of did bring a lot of problems to the people. People were killed in the process. Okay, this happens when a leader does not accept fault, does not want to correct, does not want to listen to others, and empathy goes away. All those five elements in Clay, those are not there. And that's what happens. The leader just, just because of the chair and the position, becomes this megalomaniac, and we have a problem. So don't do that, please. Particularly in schools and colleges and universities, you don't need to do that. I mean, it's a wonderful, living world out there. There's young kids who I mean, it's wonderful to work with them. They don't need this. Definitely don't need this, right? So it affects them. Because you will not do it with the children, but you will probably do it with your staff, and that then translates downwards. So avoid that as it goes through. And I tell this in corporates also. I tell this in the army. I tell this in government PSUs, startups, everywhere. Startups particularly, they have to avoid this. That's really important. So what are the answers to be a good leader? You know, lots of negatives I've been talking about. So what are the answers to be a good leader? And this is again written in my book and elaborated on it. Number one is love. The empathy or love part. Love in India. Problem is when we say love, it has some other connotation. It has the physical kind of thing, which I'm not talking about that. No, love is about caring. Love is about giving. Love is about helping. Okay. Buddha said that what is the difference between like and love? When he was asked what is the difference between like and love, he says, if you like a flower, there's a flower in the garden, a beautiful flower in the garden. If you like that flower, you will cut it and bring it into your house and keep it there in a vase. But if you love that flower, you will let it bloom and grow where it is. Okay? That is the difference between like and love. And that's what I want all leaders to really think about. Okay, are you growing your talent or are you just growing yourself? That's important. Initiative. You have to show initiative. Effort. Ownership. Same words which are there in Claire are coming out again. Okay, that's really important. And this initiative is, of course, a huge thing, which and it can be done in very simple ways, small things. The leader can bring about certain initiatives. Okay, you don't need to change the system. You don't need to change the rules. You don't need to change the practices that you have. No, one or two small things. That's more than enough. Effort. Right. Interestingly, when people would come into my company or the companies that I worked in, when young talent would join, freshers would join. One of the first things that I told them was that when you were in school, college, university, 100% was the maximum that you could achieve. Right? But now that you've joined the corporate world or the professional world, 100% is the minimum that you need to achieve. It was quite stunning, but that's the truth. Okay, so that is the kind of effort that we need to put in. So there would be some counters and things of that sort. So sometimes I would have a test or some written test. So this is what are the passing marks? I'll say 100% because 100% is the minimum. But they were used to that 33% or 40% from school and college. So I said, fine. I said, let's say you got 35%. Let's say you got 40% and you were given a certificate. But do you understand what has happened? You have got the certificate because you have got 40%, but you have failed by 60%. Which is bigger? Now, as a leader, we need to understand this point. Right? Okay. So that's what these four things which I really talked about in my book. And this will make leadership zoetic. There's a word that I've used in my book. It's not jargon, it's an English word. So zoetic means to be alive, to be living, right, to be important, to be vital to the system. And this will make leadership a lot more vital to the whole system, and that is important as it comes through. And if we do all this, follow all these facts in a proper scientific way, prudent, okay, not giving away things openly, your personal brand will build up. Okay, that is something also which I really like talking about, is the personal branding. Your personal brand will build up, and that improves your market value. It improves your network. It improves your personality, your influence group, and so on and so forth. That is important, to build up your personal brand. Today everybody is the same. I have a class of 40 people. I'm using education as an example here. Okay, I have a class of 40 people. I teach history. I get good results, 100% success rate, more than 80% marks are scored by 75% of the students, and so on and so forth. So these are all common. Every teacher in Lucknow or anywhere in India is probably having the same kind of results or better. These are parity points that I call them, points of parity, on par with anyone else. What makes you stand out from others, teachers? What makes you stand out from other administrators or other principals are your points of difference. That is what is important. Differentiating is important. And if you can differentiate, your personal brand goes up. That's where you have to work on it. Okay. So there are a lot of examples in the corporate world which I gave, how you could possibly differentiate from others. You go to buy a car, showroom, parity, test drive, parity, free insurance for the first year, parity. But what is differentiates? Why do you buy A car and not B car? That makes the difference. Okay, so it could vary from city to city. It could vary from the type of education being provided. It could vary on the board that you're following. So you need to work that out. Okay, and that's what I follow a lot. And when I do interviews, I look for these differentiations. I don't look for the parities. The young people come and they say, I'm hardworking. And then if it's in sales, they'll say, I like traveling. These are all common things. Maybe a little different. What is it? That's very important. Okay, so I've done a little work. So just coming to the last section that I have, which I had some points which probably you have sensed what I was going to talk about, probably in education, is that we ultimately come to that class 10, class 12 examination. It's an event, okay, which the child has to go through, get good marks, get a certificate, and move on to the next stage of his or her life. What that is still there, that is not moving out at the moment, right? What we can do is make the life of that child to work when he or she is moving to those events better, help in better understanding of the subject, right? Help the child grasp more. That is what is more important. Rather than the child just memorizing and giving the exams, can the child do better by understanding, grasping, working on it? Okay. So we have started some things like projects, and we give various extracurricular activities, etc., which build in these elements. But probably we need to do more as it comes through, because recent or of late, psychology has told us something else. Okay. In the 90s, there was the introduction of something called NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming. Okay, and that clearly told us, this was done by Bandler and Grinder, the two fathers of NLP, and they clearly told us that we all learn differently And there are three learning styles. All of us have one of them: the auditory, the visual, and the kinesthetic. Last year, I did a session in a school in Lucknow, and we worked on this. And it was clear not only the children had these three learning styles, the teachers also had these three learning styles. So, what was happening was a huge disconnect. Okay. If the teacher is a visual person and the child is an auditory or kinesthetic, there was a disconnect because we saw or we understood that the words were different, the style of teaching was different, the methods used was different, the props used were different, and so on and so forth. And that is why sometimes a child who enjoys a subject up to a particular class suddenly takes a dislike to that subject because the teacher changes and it's the learning style changes. Okay, so NLP has taught us a lot and we need to work on it. There are some schools I know who have built this into their system, but it's not at all prudent of what they're doing. I don't agree with that. See, I was a second generation NLP student. I went in back in the 90s. The person who trained me was trained by the fathers of NLP. That's Bandler and Grinder. So I was a second generation person to learn NLP, and those elements are tremendous. And we found last year that we could really use this system and things become better. Okay. Of course, to change your whole teaching style and the material that you use, the methods that you use, even the questions that you ask, the question paper that you set, right? It can be changed. Takes a little time. It will take time, not overnight thing, but it can be done. But it makes the life of the student a lot better. Okay, and that's something that we really need to work on this. Okay, beautiful. The other one is what has come out much earlier than NLP was everybody has their own style of communication. Okay, I could be more action oriented, or I could be talking about processes. When you talk to me, I start thinking of Excel sheets and columns and rows. Put things into a map, and so I could be more process oriented. Or I'm more people oriented person. This is somebody who I like to talk to chat with, or an idea oriented people. So there are different communication styles, and everybody has that. We need to look at it. Okay, look at the teachers and then convey to them that your class has all these styles, so you need to factor in all these when you are delivering your lecture, your talk, or your teaching session. It will make a huge difference within the class. Okay, and of course then there is the new one that is coming in, that is neuroscience, and I work a lot on neuroscience. And this is I work with professionals, particularly with sales teams. It is proving to be excellent, when it comes to them, when we talk about adaptive communication there. Now, this is a little higher level. So we're dealing with children. So up to maybe 6 years, 7 years. So this means all these learning styles and communication styles may not have fully developed in the child. Okay. It's a little later as we go crossing the age of 8 and 10, as we go further, where the learning style starts setting in. And that is why I said a child enjoys a subject, and probably you will see this up to 8 years, 10 years, they will enjoy subject and then suddenly they take a dislike to a particular subject. Why does that happen? It's because the learning style, the communication style sets in. And psychology has shown that probably after 10, on an average 10, 12, this will set in. And that's absolutely a fact. Okay, that's absolutely a fact. I can take it from my own personal example, is that I enjoyed my subjects, okay, up to a certain age. And then suddenly I just couldn't score marks in some of the subjects. I really couldn't score marks in some of the subjects. What had changed? From diagrams and drawing diagrams and talking about that diagram or describing that diagram or the process, it was now solving those problems. I couldn't manage those. Years later, when I went through all these trainings and sitting with about NLP and communication, then I realized what kind of person I am. Okay, and I said, okay, that was the reason why I couldn't do those, or could not, enjoy those subjects anymore, right? Because it changed. Okay, and you can see that in the higher classes, 10, 12, when they're no, not 10, 12, when age 10 and 12 onwards, you will see, I mean, does the child first draw the diagram and then describe, or describes and then draws the diagram? That simple thing will tell you lots. Okay, so that's what I wanted to convey. So my idea of education, as it probably goes forward, I just want to give it. I'm sorry, you may not want to take it, but I'm just giving it. Is that psychology or psychometrics is telling us many things. Let us bring that into the system. Okay, let us child internalize what they are learning so that they could probably use it once they get out of school, college, and university, and use it for their betterment. That internalizing part is very important. You see, the MBBS course, 4.5 years of hardcore study, theory, and then 1 year internship. What is that intern? Being an intern means you're internalizing everything. We are not doing that with our education system at the moment. To me, I believe when you're in class 10 and class 12, this is your internship, where you internalize whatever you have learned for a higher level. That is where I believe we should go. And as leaders, we should probably think about it. We probably can't bring about this change. All you and me cannot bring it. We need a collective effort to bring about this change. But what can we do to at least make teachers' jobs simpler and more effective? What can we do to make our students, learn better with less stress? Okay, that is very important. Okay, so as leaders, let us think about it. So as leaders, we have to handle our administration work, we have to handle the staff, we have to handle the students. There are so many things that we've got to do. Uh, there are some negatives which I already spoken about, which we should avoid, right? Take that out of the system. It's easy to fall into that trap, to develop yes, and there will always be people to be yes men. It's easy to fall into their trap. Don't do that, please. It'll be harmful in the long run, and you are killing good talent, or the good talent will walk away. Okay, so all those harmful things which I talked about, from the Sanatana Dharma or the seven deadly sins, or even what I wrote in my book, just look at them very seriously. Remove those from your leadership behavior. Bring in simple things like love, initiatives, effort, ownership, right? Empathy. These are simple things which you just need to bring in. Okay, work on them for everybody, and look at ways in which you could make life less stressful. That's what's important. Thank you. Hand it back to Shilpi.
Okay, thank you, Andrew, for being so precise. And if you mute yourself, I think my voice will not echo.
Yes. Yes, Shilpi.
Yeah. So, like I was telling you that this is the first time I have seen somebody speaking about leadership in such a soft and subtle manner. Otherwise, I hear a lot of, it's not like on this platform I'm talking about, but like whenever I have attended seminars and workshops, and there's such bombastic vocabulary and language and everything. I feel like, and at that point of time, instead of getting motivated to go to that level, I feel, oh, I lack all these things. I don't have these things. So, so thank you so much for being so, in a very simple words, you have explained that it doesn't take much to become a leader. And
Yes,
you
true.
need not have extraordinary skills to be a leader. In
No.
other words, what you're trying to say is, something that I remember from the Bhagavad Gita also, that every person is a leader in himself, because the kind of behavior, by your own behavior and your character, you can inspire. Even if you inspire one person, you
Yes.
are a leader in yourself. So
Absolutely
there's a
correct.
question coming from one of our very esteemed principals. One of our, she's from Kendriya Vidyalaya, retired vice principal, and she says, "How to switch from bad leadership to good leadership when I'm an employee?" Yes, it's a very straightforward question, and mostly most of us, I think you were mentioning this even in your talk, that sometimes we become loyal to leaders and we feel that they are our leaders, so loyalty is a definition of loyalty. Doesn't mean that you have, when you say loyalty, it doesn't mean that you even have to stand by the wrong that they do.
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. So that is, I think, what she's trying to ask is that how do you shift from a good leadership to bad leadership? Like, we get those guilt conscious in ourselves, especially in today's time. When you are feeling that this is not happening right, but because that leader has actually maybe at some point of time motivated you, encouraged you, brought to a certain level, so you feel, I cannot speak against him or her. I cannot say anything, or I cannot tell her that you're wrong. So, how do we do that? Shift the gears.
Okay. So I understand from the question that you are the lady, or she's talking about
Yeah.
a employee, and there is a leader. So if the employee is experiencing a lot of bad leadership, how
Yeah.
to get out of that situation, or how to
Yes.
change that
Yeah.
situation. Well,
Yes.
in biology, or in the medical world, we have three words: is fight,
Hmm.
fright, flight.
Okay.
Okay. Fight,
Yes.
fright, flight.
Yeah.
Fight it. If you can fight it, great. But then you probably need to be knowing the Prime Minister of India, or some big gun like that, to fight it. It's very difficult to fight it. Okay. Even if you form a union also, it's pretty difficult to fight it, and it'll take up a lot of your time, and your personal branding, your own personal branding, will come down. Other is fright. If you get afraid, if you start fearing that person, you will always
Yeah.
be subjugated. I mean, the person will keep pressing you down further and further, and the person is not alone. He or she will have a coterie, what we call a
Yes.
cabal, right? And they will keep bullying you until you are suppressed totally, and in ruins you will have to leave that organization. The third is flight. Once you
Hmm.
sense this, that there is bad leadership, and you are not learning anything under bad leadership, you will not learn anything. You'll only learn, what are the bad things, how to lead people in a good way, in an uplifting way. You will not be learning that. So then I will say flight. Move out, look for a change. Okay. Look back at whatever you experienced, as as something that you have learned, and that you will never do that in your own as a leader. You will never do that as a leader. So just look back at that and move forward. No need in your interview to talk about it, that there was bad leadership there. No need
Yeah,
to
not
talk
at
about
all.
it. Just go ahead and just it, right? So three words, think about it. If you can fight it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to be frightened, be frightened forever in life. Okay. Or flight, just move out. Okay. I was experiencing bad leadership 2 years ago. Horrible leadership, nepotistic leadership, megalomaniac leadership. I said, that's enough for me. I need to move on in life. Okay. Because I am not gaining anything out here. Right. As
Exactly.
old as I may be, I need to keep learning.
Yeah.
Right. That's it. So every year should be a new year. Every year should be a new learning year. If that's not happening, it's time to move out. And I moved on. That's the way it is. I hope I have answered.
Yeah.
The other is, if you're a leader and you are practicing the bad leadership traits, then I will just suggest that take a holiday, go to the hills or go to the beach, 2 weeks, think about it, come back a changed person. And Shilpi, you have said it. What I have suggested is nothing difficult. It's what you do with your children, it's what you do with your spouse, right? It's what you do at home. The same thing, just extrapolate it in a professional manner in your office. That's all.
I continuing from here. The next question would be like you were talking about, the third thing, flight. This is something that mostly because in India it is believed that we come from the British Raj, so history always influences people because we have come from a history where we have been always like before Britishers there were Mughals, before Mughals there were like so many other regional kings and queens. So loyalty, stability, there's something which is enrooted in our system. So whenever we feel experiencing a very bad leadership, I have experienced it myself, and many of my friends have also, asked many a time suggestions from me that it's been just 6 months or 7 months or maybe some time that they have joined, and suddenly they realize that we are not under a good leadership. So they immediately ask me, should I leave, and so I tell them, if you're not comfortable, please go ahead. And if it's not giving you, if you look into the future and you don't find any growth and you're not seeing that your skills are being utilized, then please move ahead. So they are like, what about stability? My CV is not going to speak very good about it. My parents are also telling me that, please stay here. It's what you call in Hindi, अरे चलता है हर जगह ऐसे ही होता है, so please learn to adjust. Now this term adjusting, um,
Tolerance.
tolerance and adjustment and loyalty and stability. I think all these words are around security. I
Absolutely
think these
correct.
word defines security. So
I
that is
believe.
why parents and people who are elder to us tell this.
Yeah.
So how right it is if I tell somebody, okay, in 6 months' time you feel that you're going to be wasting your time here. So is stability more important or flight more important at that time?
Okay, so I'll answer this in a little different manners, Shilpi. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know your age, so I'll not ask your age. I should not ask a lady her age also.
No, no,
So
you can, you can.
no,
I am eligible for the vaccine. I'm in my 30s.
I was eligible in the second. Okay, so it's like this. We have to look at what we are experiencing right now, and you will probably have experienced this. Psychology, people who are working in this professionals have clubbed generations into certain periods. Okay, those born before 1964 were called baby
Yeah.
boomers. 1964 to 1982, they were called Generation X. Okay,
Yes, yes.
most of us are in Generation X. 1982 to about 1998 or so is the Generation Y, or which we call millennials.
Hmm.
Subsequent to that, 1998 to 2011 is what we call Generation Z or Z. Okay,
Yeah.
2011 onwards is what we will call Generation Alpha. Okay,
Yes.
50% of our workforce today is the millennials, and now coming in is Generation Z. See, millennials, the oldest millennial will be about 40 years old today. Okay, so that accounts for 50% of our workforce today. Right now, also coming in, now stepping in will be Generation Z, those born after 1998. Look at baby boomers. Go back, look at baby boomers and Generation X, all those who were born before 1982. They had one theory: join a company and then you leave that company. 35-40 साल आप उसी कंपनी में
हाँ,
काम करो, loyalty दिखाओ. And they
हाँ,
were absolutely correct. Number one, the companies were good, looked after their people, right? Some companies were, of course, pushed you to work very hard. But the thing is that you did not have many opportunities. What were your options? You had
yeah.
very little options, right? If I joined a pharma company in 1960 or so, I probably had Sarabhai and maybe a Cipla and maybe
Yeah,
a
yeah.
Albert David, 4 or 5 companies who I could move across, but it was difficult. right? Very difficult. But you look at those that so the understanding at that time was loyalty, stay with the company, work with the company, join it, retire, take your PF, take your gratuity, and enjoy life
But then,
after that.
Andrew, those people were valued
Subsequently,
by the company. Those people
yeah,
were
they,
valued by the company.
no, even the millennials and now those that will come in are also valued by the company because the millennials have a totally different mindset, and this is well documented. Okay, you can read book after book, and I've also written about it. For one thing, millennials don't look for a leader. Very simple fact of life. They look for a coach, and this has been
Yes.
documented by survey after survey. Okay, they
Yes.
look for a coach who can help me. They
Hmm.
are highly
Hmm.
impatient people. They are by nature highly impatient people, right? Ready to change. They are not interested in whether their salary includes provident fund and gratuity. They're not interested. They're not interested in buying houses. Rented house will go, right? So they're an entirely different mindset from the previous generation, which is Generation X, which is you and me. And baby boomers is 64 prior, and now baby boomers are retiring at the moment. Okay, in
Hmm.
another 2 3 years they would have retired. Okay,
Yeah.
so they're entirely different. The other factor is that all your HR practices, policies that have been made are available in an organization today have been written by baby boomers and Generation X for themselves, thinking about themselves. Nothing has been written for a millennial. So now, when a millennial enters into a company, they find nothing that is suiting them. And I said leaders are copy paste. Most leaders are copy paste versions. So leaders that are there are just copy pasting the previous bosses. They are not changing and adjusting themselves to the millennials.
Hmm.
Those are your customers. You have to change as a leader. And that's what I said in between, very subtly. I said it. You have to change to factor in these millennials. And now you have to change once more to factor into the Generation Z. So you
Yes.
have to show, in fact, three different facets of your life to take care of Generation X, Y, and Z. So that is the whole problem. So that's why I use the word tolerance. What When I talk to millennials, I said it's perfectly okay to change, but do try to stay at least 3 to 5 years. It's very important. If it's a toxic environment, please leave.
What
Right?
about if the skills are not being utilized?
That is what's happening in millennials. They are having tremendous skills. They are much better than at IT than you and me. I At 3 o'clock today, what did you tell me? Ask your son or daughter to fix your laptop, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because they are better, right? So they have tremendous skills, but because our mindset is that of baby boomer and Generation X, we are old people and we follow that. We don't want to change. हम नहीं बदलेंगे. बदल गए तो पता नहीं क्या होगा. हमारा नौकरी चला जाएगा.
Hmm. Hmm.
हम हमारा वैल्यू क्या रहेगा? हमारा रिटायरमेंट का क्या होगा? We have this and we don't. नहीं, हम ऐसे ही रहेंगे. And that's the end of the whole story. So to millennials, when I talk, I said, if it's a toxic environment, please leave that environment immediately. If they're not using your skills, please go ahead, change. Look for somewhere place where they will change. But at the same time, please show tolerance. You are impatient, we know that, but show tolerance, right? Listen to them. They're not going to last very long. So please listen to them and just, play it out for as long as you can. I hope I've answered your question.
Yes.
you
Yes.
have
Yes.
to
Thank
you,
you
you
so
have
much.
to look at the mindset, the psychology mindset of the generations that are coming in, and you
Yeah,
have
I
to
mean, that is, so I believe this is the quality of a leadership to look at the changing generations.
yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
what they employed 10 years a person, they cannot,
Yeah.
they cannot
And
compare a person who's coming
no,
today
no.
for employment and somebody who came 5 years
There,
back.
yeah, and there's no good or bad in this. Everybody is doing
Yeah.
what God has given us. God has given us this kind of personality, this
Yes.
mindset.
Yes.
This
Yes.
we just follow. But what is important as a leader is to understand that where I need to switch.
So I am so thankful to you and taking out time and being here and spend, I think we've almost had 40-45 minutes here with you, and it did not seem like it. So here I would like to appreciate that. Thank you for joining in the disruptive education movement. And Dr. Sunita Gandhi, this global education, actually, today I realize, I mean, I'm not just saying it because I'm working here, but it's a startup and we began 10 years back. But the fact is that here every employee has been given a certain role, but we are free to choose what else do we want to do.
That is
It
important. That
is
is very
not
important.
that if I have been giving this particular role, then I only have to stick. Our leaders are so democratic that tomorrow I can call up and say, this is something else I would like to introduce, or this is an idea I would like to, and it is appreciated, and the person is given a chance to begin with it. So,
My thanks to Dr. Sunita Gandhi, really. I mean,
yeah,
for giving me
she
this
is so
opportunity
visionary.
and bringing this concept in, because this is a concept which was started by Google and by Atlassian and various other
Yeah.
IT companies, and it has worked fantastically, right? So all the best. I envy you. I wish I could be an employee in Getty.
Sure, you'll be a part. So even really, I mean, we all here, employees are, we all have our say, and we can anytime take in an extra role, whatever we want to do, and that is implemented, and that we are encouraged to take it and do it. So thank you so much, Andrew, once again for
Thank
giving us such a
you.
good time and giving us good lessons in leadership. Have a lovely evening.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and hope to see you all again soon. And I hope to
Yeah,
be in
sure.
Lucknow as quickly as possible and enjoy the biryani and kebabs.
I want to be in Bombay and Gujarat very soon.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Bye bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.